I'm going to show you how to make a 3-gallon batch of porter in this episode. Get ready to press pause, because here comes the recipe. It's all right here in this bag. Only one type of malt in this mixture is here for the purpose of conversion into sugar. The other 3 types of malt are here for the sole purpose of adding flavor and dark color to the beer. Before you can begin the mashing process, you must first crack the malt. Running it through a mill gently cracks open the husks so that water can reach the insides of the grains. You can get this done at the local home brewing store where you purchase the malt. There's a few different ways to mash or cook your malted barley to produce the sugary syrup needed for fermentation. But first, I'll give you a few basic points to keep in mind about mashing. First, a stabilized and precise temperature between 150 and 158.5 degrees is key to a successful mash. Second, any temperature over 158.5 degrees will destroy the enzymes in the malt that turn the starch into sugar, leading to a failed mashing attempt. Third, any temperature over 165 degrees will release tannins from the malted barley husks, making your beer bitter. The common and easy way to mash your grains is to dump them into an igloo cooler and pour hot water into them as necessary to keep the temperature in the proper range. I don't like this idea very much because I generally don't like cooking with plastic, especially plastic that wasn't made for cooking. I don't want any carcinogens leaching out of the plastic and into my beer. For that reason, I mash my malted barley in half-gallon canning jars. And these 5 jars hold all of the grain for a 3-gallon batch of beer. Each one of these jars has exactly 1 pound and 3 ounces of malt in them. The empty space at the tops of the jars fits 6 measuring cups of water. Coincidentally, this fulfills a basic rule of thumb for mashing, which calls for using 1 1/3 quarts of water for each pound of grain. Now for the cooking part. There's 2 actions you must accomplish in order to successfully mash your grain. First, achieve instantaneous proper temperature. Second, hold that temperature for 90 minutes. Achieving instantaneous proper temperature is easy. Simply heat up your water to exactly 160 degrees. This is known as your strike temperature, and pour it into the jars of grain. The grain, being at room temperature, will cool down the water to between 150 and 158 degrees. Even though we're only adding about 2 gallons of water to the 5 jars, it's necessary to start with a total of 4 gallons in the brew pot. The extra water will be used immediately in the next step. It's important to start with exactly 4 gallons. You'll see why right now. After filling the 5 jars, we're left with roughly 2 gallons in the brew pot. To hold the 5 jars of mash at our desired temperature, we'll place them into this leftover water. As you can see, 2 gallons is the exact amount we need to fully surround the jars. Since it's already at 160 degrees, we only need to raise it up 5 to 10 degrees more. In general, the water surrounding the jars needs to be 10 degrees hotter than the temperature we want to maintain inside of the jars. This method provides a stable means of sustaining the temperature inside of your ball jars. It also provides a more gentle means of transferring the heat from your stove to your mash, in case it happens to drop out of the proper temperature range. It's important to constantly check the temperature inside each jar. It happens often that one jar will heat up faster than the other jars. I don't know why this happens, but I suspect the enzymes converting starch into sugar generates heat. A single jar can approach the upper limit of the temperature range in a hurry, while the others remain relatively stable. If this happens, simply take the hot jar out of the brew pot so it can cool down rapidly. After 90 minutes have passed, it's time to extract the sweet syrupy wort out of the bottles and into temporary storage. Since the brew pot's being used at this point, the wort can be stored in other ball jars. We only need one empty one to get started. The extraction process is as simple as securing this stainless steel sprouting screen onto the jar where the lid would normally go and pouring out the wort. After draining the wort, there'll still be a good amount left in the grains. In order to extract every last bit, it's necessary to pour hot water into the jars and drain them a second time. This is known as sparging. A general rule of thumb for sparging calls for using 2 quarts of water at 160 degrees for each pound of grain. Filling the jars up 1.5 times fulfills this rule of thumb. Remember, any temperature over 165 degrees releases tannins from the barley husks, making your beer bitter. This is not a traditional sparging technique, where the wort would be run through the grains a second time to filter out the solids. As such, it'll be a bit cloudy. After an hour, most of the solids will settle to the bottoms of the jars. If you wait a whole day, that's even better. I'll show you an easy way to remove them. But first, I'll show you what to do with your time while you're waiting for them to settle to the bottom. Before you can move on to step 2, the 90-minute boil, you must spend about an hour sanitizing the fermentation bottle in preparation for the wort.